Hello, and welcome. Tonight, our quiet journey takes us back to revolutionary Paris, 1793, into the world of a prisoner surviving the Reign of Terror. Before we settle in, if you appreciate these quiet histories, a simple like and a subscription is always welcome. I always love to see where our story is traveling to, so feel free to leave a comment with where you're listening from and what time it is in your corner of the world. So now, turn down the lights, get settled in, and let's allow the story to begin. Our story begins in the year 1793, or as the new government insists you call it, year 2 of the Republic. It is October, the month now known as Brumaire, the month of fog, and a deep, cold fog of fear and suspicion has settled over the city of Paris. The glorious, hopeful revolution of 1789 has soured, curdling into a thing of paranoia and blood. Your name is Julian. You are a watchmaker, a man who has built his life around the principles of order, precision, and quiet, patient craftsmanship. Your small shop and the apartment above it are on a respectable, but not wealthy, street in the Marais district. Your world is one of tiny, intricate gears, of polished brass and steady hands, a world that is the very opposite of the chaotic, violent, and unpredictable city that now surrounds you. Every day, you try to make your life as small and as unnoticeable as possible. You have learned the new language of survival. You address everyone as citizen. You wear the tricolour cockade on your hat, a small, circular badge of red, white, and blue that is a mandatory, and often insufficient, symbol of your loyalty. You read the radical newspapers, like Perdue and the Friend of the People, not for the news, but to learn what the correct opinions are this week, to understand which revolutionary hero of last month is now being denounced as a traitor to the Republic. The very air of the city is thick with tension. The queues outside the bakeries are long and silent, the bread scarce and expensive. The sound of church bells, which once marked the hours of the day, has been replaced by the sound of bells being torn from their steeples to be melted down for the cannons of the Revolutionary Army. And every afternoon, like a grim and unholy sacrament, you hear the distant, rumbling sound of the tumbrel, the open cart that carries the days condemned to the guillotine in the Place de la Révolution. You have learned not to watch. You are not an aristocrat. You are not a priest. You are not a politician. You are simply a man trying to continue his craft, to provide for his wife, and to remain invisible to the ever-watchful eyes of the local committee of revolutionary surveillance. Your undoing is not a grand act of treason. It is a small, mundane, and terribly human moment of frustration. 4 months, you have been in a petty dispute with your downstairs neighbour, a citizen Lamarck, over a leaking water pipe. Lamarck is a fervent, resentful man, a member of the local Jacobin club who wears his revolutionary zeal like a suit of armour, using it to intimidate those around him. One afternoon, after another argument over the cost of the repair, you lose your temper. In all my life, I have never seen such incompetence. You shout at him in the courtyard. The guilds under the king would have fixed this in a day. It is a foolish, careless, and immediately regrettable thing to say. To praise any institution of the old regime, even a guild of plumbers, is now a political act. You see a strange, triumphant glint in citizen Lamarck's eye. You have just handed him a weapon. For a week, nothing happens. You try to put the incident out of your mind. You retreat deeper into the quiet, predictable world of your tiny gears and springs. Then, one night, it comes, the knock at the door. It is not a normal knock. It is a heavy, authoritative, an impatient pounding that seems to shake the entire building. You and your wife are already in bed. You look at each other. Your face is pale in the moonlight, a shared, unspoken terror in your eyes. This is the knock that every citizen of Paris now dreads. You pull on your trousers and a shirt, your hands trembling so much you can barely fasten the buttons. You open the door. On your landing stand 4 men. They are not soldiers, they are your neighbors. There is Lamarck, his face a mask of smug, patriotic duty. And there are 3 other members of the local committee, men you have seen in the street, at the market. They are cobblers, printers, and shopkeepers, but tonight they are the arbiters of life and death. They wear tricolour sashes over their plain clothes, and they are armed with pistols and pikes. Citizen Julian, one of them asks, though he knows perfectly well who you are. He holds up a piece of paper. It is a warrant for your arrest, issued by the committee and signed with a crude, inky stamp. By the authority of the law of suspects, you are under arrest. The law of suspects. It is a new, terrifyingly vague law that has turned the entire nation into a web of informers. It allows for the arrest of anyone who, by their conduct, their associations, their remarks, or their writings, has shown themselves to be a partisan of tyranny or federalism and an enemy of liberty. It is a law under which anyone can be accused, and no one can be proven innocent. Your wife begins to weep, pleading with the men, telling them there's been a mistake. You try to speak, to ask what the charge is, but they push you aside. They enter your small apartment. 2 of them begin a cursory search, knocking over your neat stacks of watch components, pulling your few books from their shelves. They are looking for anything incriminating, a letter with a royalist seal, a banned pamphlet, a portrait of the executed king. They find nothing, but it does not matter. The accusation itself is now the only proof that is needed. Citizen Lamarck stands by the door, his arms crossed, a look of grim satisfaction on his face. He spoke against the Republic. He says to his fellow committee members, he praised the time of the tyrant. After a few minutes, the search is over. You are told to put on your coat and your shoes. You are allowed one brief, desperate embrace with your wife. I will be back, you whisper. A lie you both know is a lie. It is just a mistake. You are led out of your home, down the familiar, winding staircase, and into the dark, cobbled street. A light rain is falling. You are placed between 2 of the men, and the small procession begins its walk through the sleeping city. You have just been erased from your own life. You are no longer Julian, the watchmaker. You are a suspect, and you are being taken to a place where suspects go, a place from which very few ever return. You are marched through the dark and silent streets of your own neighborhood. The city at night is a different world. The loud, patriotic fervor of the day has been replaced by a tense, watchful silence. The only sounds are the rhythmic splash of your own footsteps in the puddles, the steady drumming of the autumn rain, and the distant, mournful cry of a patrol demanding to know who goes there. Your captors, your neighbors, answer with the correct revolutionary password, and your small, sad procession is allowed to pass. The flickering lanterns cast long, monstrous shadows that dance and writhe on the wet stone walls of the buildings. Every darkened alleyway seems to be filled with unseen watchers. Every shuttered window seems to hide a pair of suspicious eyes. The entire city feels like a great, dark prison, and you are simply being moved from one cell to a smaller, more official one. Your destination is not a grim, ancient fortress, but something almost stranger. You are taken to the Luxembourg Palace. You have known this building your entire life as a symbol of royal and aristocratic grace, with its beautiful gardens and its elegant, classical facade, but tonight it is something else. The gardens are neglected and overgrown, the windows are barred, and the ornate, gilded gates are manned by coarse, unsmiling guards of the National Guard, their bayonets gleaming in the lantern light. The palace of a princess has become a prison of the Republic. You are pushed through a side door and into a small, chaotic, and foul-smelling office. This is the office of the greffier, the prison clerk. He is a small, weaselly man in a dirty shirt, sitting behind a great, ink-stained ledger. The room is filled with other new arrivals, a silent, terrified group of men and women, their faces pale with shock. One by one, you are brought before the clerk. When your turn comes, he does not look at you. He simply stares at the warrant your captors have given him. Name, he asks, his voice bored and flat. Julian, citizen Julian. You say profession. Watchmaker. Accusation. He glances at the paper. Enemy of liberty. Partisan of tyranny. He says the words as if he were reading a list of groceries. He dips his quill pen in an inkpot and, with a scratchy, hurried hand, he enters your name into the great, open ledger, the livre d'écrou. With that simple act, your official existence as a citizen of the Republic is over. You are now a number, a name on a list, an inmate. The next stage is the stripping away of your identity. You are ordered to empty your pockets onto the table. Your few coins, your handkerchief, your house key all are swept into a small wooden box. The guards take your belt, your suspenders, and the sharp, pointed tools of your trade that you keep in a small leather roll. Then they demand your pocket watch. It is your own masterpiece, a silver watch you spent a year of your life creating. For a moment, you hesitate, a final, futile act of defiance. A guard shoves you, and you reluctantly place the watch on the table. It is the last piece of your old life, and it is now gone. When the processing is complete, a jailer, a large, brutish man who smells of cheap wine, takes you by the arm. He leads you down a long, marble corridor, its former grandeur now obscured by dirt and neglect. He stops before a pair of great, ornate double doors and, with a heavy iron key, he unlocks them. He shoves you forward. In you go, citizen, he sneers. Welcome to the Republic of Suspects. You stumble forward into the room, and the doors are slammed and locked behind you. The sensory shock is overwhelming. The room was once a grand salon, a ballroom for the palace's aristocratic owners. It is a vast, high-ceilinged space with the faint, ghostly outlines of removed paintings on the silk-panelled walls and a magnificent, but now dark and dusty, crystal chandelier hanging from the ceiling. But the room is now a human kennel. It is filled with hundreds of people, a dense, writhing mass of humanity. They are crammed into every available inch of space. Men and women, young and old, rich and poor, are all thrown together in a single, chaotic community of the doomed. You see aristocratic women in the tattered remains of silk dresses, their faces pale with a kind of haughty disbelief. You see priests in their dark robes, murmuring prayers. You see merchants, lawyers, craftsmen like yourself, and simple, illiterate peasants from the countryside, all arrested under the same, vague, all-encompassing law of suspects. The air is almost unbreathable, a thick, foul mixture of unwashed bodies, stale sweat, fear, sickness, and the overpowering stench of the overflowing chamber pots that serve as the only form of sanitation. The sound is a constant, low, humming roar, the murmur of 100 anxious conversations, the sound of a woman quietly weeping in a corner, the sharp, angry words of an argument over a piece of bread, the rustle of straw as people try, and fail, to find a comfortable position on the hard, wooden floor. There are no beds, there are no cells, there is only the floor. People have staked out small territories with their meager belongings. They lie on thin, filthy pallets of straw, huddled together for warmth and for some small, human comfort. You stand by the door, utterly bewildered, a new fish in a vast, fetid aquarium. No one pays you much attention. The arrival of new prisoners is a constant, unremarkable event. A man near you, an older gentleman with a weary, cynical look in his eyes, sees your disorientation. "Find a space on the floor, if you can," he says, his voice a quiet, resigned whisper. "The benches were all taken last month, and watch your pockets, though they've likely left you with nothing worth stealing." You stumble further into the room, looking for an empty patch of floor. You are no longer Julian, the watchmaker, a man with a home, a wife, a craft. You have been thrown into a great, anonymous river of the condemned. The knock on the door was the end of your world. This is what comes after. You find a small, unclaimed patch of filthy floorboards in a corner, between an old priest who is silently moving his lips in prayer and a large baker whose snores already rumble through the room. You have no blanket, no pillow. You curl up on the hard, cold wood, pulling your coat tightly around you, trying to make yourself as small as possible. Sleep, however, is an impossible luxury. The night is a long, waking nightmare, a symphony of human misery. The air is thick with the sounds of suffering, the quiet, desperate weeping of a young woman nearby, the feverish muttering of a sick man, the loud, angry snores and sleep talk of 100 exhausted bodies. The floor is hard and unforgiving, and the cold from the stone walls seeps into your bones. Every time you begin to drift into a state of shallow, exhausted sleep, you are jolted awake by a new sound, a new fear, your mind replaying the moment of your arrest, the look on your wife's face, the smug satisfaction in the eyes of your neighbor, Lamarck, as the first, pale, grey light of dawn filters through the high, grimy windows of the salon. The room slowly stirs to life. There is no bell, no formal waking, just a slow, collective groan as hundreds of aching bodies begin to move. This is your first morning in the prison, and with it comes the day's first, and only, meal. The great double doors are unbolted, and not guards, but other prisoners, assigned to kitchen duty, haul in several huge, steaming cauldrons. The smell that fills the room is not an appetizing one. It is the smell of a thin, greasy, and indeterminate vegetable soup, which the prisoners have grimly nicknamed soupe la grimace, the soup that makes you grimace. They also carry large wicker baskets filled with hard, dark loaves of bread, the infamous bread of equality, which is heavy with bran and often contains bits of straw or worse. There is no orderly queue. The distribution of the food is a grim, desperate scrum, a stark and immediate lesson in the new social order of the prison. The stronger, more ruthless prisoners push their way to the front, ensuring they get the thickest part of the soup from the bottom of the cauldron. You, being new and disoriented, find yourself at the back, and by the time you are given your portion in a small, tin bowl, it is little more than a lukewarm, greyish water. This is what you will have to survive on. As the day wears on, you begin to observe the strange, surreal society that has taken root in this place. Stripped of their freedom and their possessions, the prisoners cling desperately to the habits and the manners of their old lives. It is a form of quiet, dignified defiance. In one corner of the great room, a group of aristocrats, their fine silk clothes now tattered and stained, have recreated a salon. They discuss philosophy, they recite poetry, They exchange witty remarks. Their voice is low and cultured, as if they were in a Parisian drawing room instead of a filthy, overcrowded jail. In another corner, a group of merchants plays cards, using a stained, dog-eared deck, their focus on the game a way of shutting out the terrifying reality that surrounds them. You see women, their hair now unpowdered and limp, carefully mending tears in their dresses, a small, futile act of maintaining order in a world of absolute chaos. You learn that information is the most valuable currency in this place. Every new prisoner who arrives is immediately surrounded, peppered with questions about the world outside. What is the latest news? Who has been arrested? Who has been executed? Is Danton's faction gaining power over Robespierre? The prisoners debate these political shifts with a desperate intensity, for they know that their very lives hang on the whims of these distant, unseen figures. You begin to speak to the people around you, and as you listen to their stories, the true, arbitrary, and insane nature of the terror becomes chillingly clear. The old priest you were next to was arrested for refusing to swear an oath of loyalty to the new civil constitution of the clergy. A young woman was arrested because the letters she received from her mother, an émigré who had fled to England, were intercepted. An old, deaf bookseller was arrested because a copy of a book with the royal coat of arms was found in his shop. You tell them your own story, the story of the leaking pipe and your foolish, angry words. They nod in a weary, knowing way. They have heard a dozen similar stories. No one here is a great, scheming traitor. They are, like you, just ordinary people, caught in the great, indiscriminate net of the law of suspects, their lives destroyed by a neighbor's grudge, a careless word, a single, unlucky coincidence. As the afternoon wears on, a new and terrible ritual begins. A hush falls over the room. The conversations, the card games, the mending, it all stops. All eyes turn to the great double doors. The doors are unbolted, and a group of guards enters, led by the prison governor. He holds a scroll of paper in his hand. The entire room seems to hold its breath. This is the list. This is the fournee, the batch, the names of those who have been summoned to appear before the revolutionary tribunal the next day. This is the lottery of death. The governor begins to read the names, his voice a flat, emotionless drone that echoes in the silent, cavernous room. Citizen d'Aubigny, an old, white-haired nobleman stands up, his face pale but composed. Citizen de Rochefort, a woman lets out a single, piercing sob and is comforted by her friends. Citizen Dubois, a baker, a man you saw arguing over a game of cards just an hour ago, slumps to the floor as if he has been struck. You listen. Your entire body is single, taut nerve, your ears straining, praying not to hear the syllables of your own name. The list is long, a dozen, then 24 names are called. And then the governor stops. He rolls up the scroll. That is all for today, he says. A collective, shuddering sigh of relief goes through the room. It is a soft, almost silent sound, but it is filled with a profound and terrible mixture of joy and guilt. You are safe. You have survived for one more day. You watch as the guards move through the crowd, gathering the condemned. Their face is a mixture of stoic resignation, open terror, and stunned disbelief. They are led out of the salon, on their way to the conciergerie, the final stop before the guillotine. The moment the doors close, the noise in the room returns, but it is different now, more frantic, more hysterical. But you remain silent. You have just witnessed the central, organizing principle of your new life. Your existence has been reduced to a single, simple, and terrifying question. Will your name be on the list tomorrow? The first day in the Luxembourg Palace prison bleeds into the second, and the second into a third, and soon the days begin to lose their individual character, merging into a single, long, and undifferentiated twilight of waiting. Your life, once a thing of precise and measured minutes, of the intricate and predictable movements of a watch, is now a shapeless, timeless expanse marked only by the slow, cyclical rhythm of fear and relief. The routine of the prison is a study in monotonous dread. You wake with the first, pale light of dawn on the hard, wooden floor. There is the grim, silent scrum for the morning's watery soup and black bread. The long, empty hours of the day are a void that must be filled. And then, in the late afternoon, comes the great, defining ritual of your existence, the calling of the list. Every day, at the same hour, the prison governor enters the great, crowded salon. Every day, the same, profound, and terrified silence falls. Every day, he unrolls his scroll and reads a new list of names, the daily tribute that the prison must offer to the revolutionary tribunal. And every day, you listen, your entire being a single, taut nerve, praying not to hear your own name. When the last name is read, and yours is not among them, a wave of dizzying, shameful relief washes over you. You have been granted another 24 hours of life. The condemned are led away, and the noise of the prison returns, but it is a fragile, hysterical sound. The entire cycle of anxiety will begin again in the morning. You learn to live in this state of perpetual, low-level terror. It becomes the normal weather of your mind. And within this great, shared ordeal, a strange and surreal society begins to form. The prisoners, stripped of everything, attempt to recreate the world they have lost. You see a former nobleman, his fine coat now threadbare, giving lessons in Greek philosophy to a small, huddled group of merchants and artisans. A once famous chemist gives lectures on the nature of gases, his audience a captive one, in every sense of the word. Women sit together, mending their torn clothes with a quiet, dignified focus, while men who were once political rivals now engage in endless, whispered debates about the latest rumors from the outside. Information is the most precious commodity, a currency more valuable than the gold that was taken from you. You learn to read the faces of the new prisoners who are brought in each night, trying to gauge the mood of the city from the nature of their accusations. You learn to listen to the gossip of the guards, to pass the half-truths and lies for any hint of a political shift that might save your life. Is the powerful Danton now out of favor? Is Robespierre's grip on the Committee of Public Safety weakening? Your life depends on the answers to these questions. A small, grim economy flourishes in the shadows. Prisoners with family on the outside, who can bribe the guards to bring in food, money, or clean linen, are the new aristocracy. A fresh loaf of bread can be traded for a better spot on the floor, away from the leaking chamber pots. A few coins can buy a share of a straw mattress, a luxury of unimaginable comfort. You, a man of modest means, have nothing to trade but your own skills. You find that your watchmakers are for detail, and your steady hands are still of some value here. You spend your days mending a torn shirt for a wealthier prisoner in exchange for a piece of his bread, or using a sharpened piece of bone to fix a noble woman's broken fan. These small, meticulous tasks are a way to earn a little extra food, but more than that, they are a way to keep your mind occupied, a way to hold on to the last, fading vestiges of the man you used to be. Death is a constant and familiar presence, and it does not always come with the reading of the list. The overcrowding and the filth are a perfect breeding ground for disease. A fever, which on the outside might be a simple inconvenience, is a death sentence here. The prisoners call it jail fever. It sweeps through the crowded room in waves. You watch as a man you have shared stories with 4 weeks begins to shiver with a violent chill. The next day, his skin is hot to the touch, and he is delirious, muttering the names of his children. There is no doctor, no medicine. He is simply moved to a designated sick corner of the room to keep him from disturbing the others. You watch, helpless, as he wastes away over the course of a few days. His body is then unceremoniously carried away by the jailers. He has escaped the guillotine, but he has not escaped the prison. The psychological toll is immense. The constant, grinding tension, the lack of hope, the ever-present face of death drives some to madness. You see a young woman who spends her entire day singing soft, childish lullabies to a bundle of rags she cradles like a baby. You see a man who simply sits and stares at the wall, his eyes empty, having retreated into a place where the terror can no longer reach him. You learn to build a wall around your own mind. You learn to live in the immediate present, to not think of the past, which is a source of unbearable grief, and to not think of the future, which is a source of unimaginable terror. Your entire world has become this single, vast, and stinking room. You know the faces of the hundreds of other suspects. You know their stories. You know who is brave, who is a coward, who is kind, and who is cruel. You have become a citizen of this strange and terrible republic of the condemned, a society living in the antechamber of death, where the only certainty is the sound of the jailer's boots approaching, and the daily, desperate prayer that your name will not be on his list. The weeks turn into a season. The cold, damp chill of autumn gives way to the even deeper, more bitter cold of winter. The great, unheated salon of the Luxembourg Palace becomes an icebox, your breath a white cloud in the air. You, Julian, have now been a prisoner for several months. You are no longer a newcomer. You are a veteran of this strange, parallel republic of suspects, and you have learned its rhythms, its rules, and its cruelties. The routine of the prison is a study in monotonous dread. You wake with the first, pale light of dawn on the hard, wooden floor. There is the grim, silent scrum for the morning's watery soup and black bread. The long, empty hours of the day are a void that must be filled. And then, in the late afternoon, comes the great, defining ritual of your existence, the calling of the list. Every day, at the same hour, the prison governor enters the great, crowded salon. Every day, the same, profound, and terrified silence falls. Every day, he unrolls his scroll and reads a new list of names, the daily tribute that the prison must offer to the revolutionary tribunal. And every day, you listen, your entire being a single, taut nerve, praying not to hear your own name. When the last name is read, and yours is not among them, a wave of dizzying, shameful relief washes over you. You have been granted another 24 hours of life. The condemned are led away, and the noise of the prison returns, but it is a fragile, hysterical sound. The entire cycle of anxiety will begin again in the morning. You learn to live in this state of perpetual, low-level terror. It becomes the normal weather of your mind. And within this great, shared ordeal, a strange and surreal society begins to form. The prisoners, stripped of everything, attempt to recreate the world they have lost. You see a former nobleman, his fine coat now threadbare, giving lessons in Greek philosophy to a small, huddled group of merchants and artisans. A once famous chemist gives lectures on the nature of gases, his audience a captive one, in every sense of the word. Women sit together, mending their torn clothes with a quiet, dignified focus, while men who were once political rivals now engage in endless, whispered debates about the latest rumors from the outside. Information is the most precious commodity, a currency more valuable than the gold that was taken from you. You learn to read the faces of the new prisoners who are brought in each night, trying to gauge the mood of the city from the nature of their accusations. You learn to listen to the gossip of the guards, to pass the half-truths and lies for any hint of a political shift that might save your life. Is the powerful Danton now out of favor? Is Robespierre's grip on the Committee of Public Safety weakening? Your life depends on the answers to these questions. A small, grim economy flourishes in the shadows. Prisoners with family on the outside, who can bribe the guards to bring in food, money, or clean linen, are the new aristocracy. A fresh loaf of bread can be traded for a better spot on the floor, away from the leaking chamber pots. A few coins can buy a share of a straw mattress, a luxury of unimaginable comfort. You, a man of modest means, have nothing to trade but your own skills. You find that your watchmaker's eye for detail and your steady hands are still of some value here. You spend your days mending a torn shirt for a wealthier prisoner in exchange for a piece of his bread, or using a sharpened piece of bone to fix a noble woman's broken fan. These small, meticulous tasks are a way to earn a little extra food, but more than that, they are a way to keep your mind occupied, a way to hold on to the last, fading vestiges of the man you used to be. Death is a constant and familiar presence, and it does not always come with the reading of the list. The overcrowding and the filth are a perfect breeding ground for disease. A fever, which on the outside might be a simple inconvenience, is a death sentence here. The prisoners call it jail fever. It sweeps through the crowded room in waves. You watch as a man you have shared stories with 4 weeks begins to shiver with a violent chill. The next day, his skin is hot to the touch, and he is delirious, muttering the names of his children. There is no doctor, no medicine. He is simply moved to a designated sick corner of the room to keep him from disturbing the others. You watch, helpless, as he wastes away over the course of a few days. His body is then unceremoniously carried away by the jailers. He has escaped the guillotine, but he has not escaped the prison. The psychological toll is immense. The constant, grinding tension, the lack of hope, the ever-present face of death drives some to madness. You see a young woman who spends her entire day singing soft, childish lullabies to a bundle of rags she cradles like a baby. You see a man who simply sits and stares at the wall, his eyes empty, having retreated into a place where the terror can no longer reach him. You learn to build a wall around your own mind. You learn to live in the immediate present, to not think of the past, which is a source of unbearable grief, and to not think of the future, which is a source of unimaginable terror. Your entire world has become this single, vast, and stinking room. You know the faces of the hundreds of other suspects. You know their stories. You know who is brave, who is a coward, who is kind, and who is cruel. You have become a citizen of this strange and terrible republic of the condemned, a society living in the antechamber of death, where the only certainty is the sound of the jailer's boots approaching, and the daily, desperate prayer that your name will not be on his list. The arrival of Danton and his followers in the prison is a profound and final disillusionment. These are not aristocrats or priests. These are the architects of the Republic, the titans of the revolution. If they can be declared enemies of the people, then the term has lost all meaning. Any hope you may have harbored that this madness was a temporary excess, that a sane and moderate faction would eventually prevail, is extinguished. There is no political logic left to follow, no faction to root for. There is only the machine, and the machine is hungry. You watch Dong Tong in the days before his own trial. He does not weep or despair. He walks through the crowded salon with a kind of thunderous, defiant energy, his great, booming voice full of gallows humor and contempt for his accusers. They are sending me to the scaffold, you hear him roar to a group of onlookers. And I shall drag Robespierre with me. But his bravado is the bravado of a man who knows he is already dead. A few days later, his name is on the list, and he is gone. The execution of Dong Tong in the spring of 1794 unleashes the final, most frenzied phase of the terror. It is as if, by devouring its most famous son, the revolution has lost all restraint. The pace of the executions accelerates dramatically. The daily lists brought by the jailer grow longer. Where once a dozen names were called, now there are 30, 40, sometimes 50 in a single day. The fournees, the batches, are becoming larger. The surreal, civilized society of the prison begins to break down under this immense, relentless pressure. The philosophical discussions fall silent. The violin is no longer played. The quiet dignity that was once a form of resistance is replaced by a raw, universal, and all-consuming fear. Hope is now a form of madness. All that is left is the grim, mathematical certainty that your own turn is coming, and it is coming soon. The heat of the summer of 1794 arrives, and with it, a new level of physical misery. The great salon becomes a sweltering, airless oven, the stench of unwashed bodies and sickness almost unbearable. And a new, even more terrifying mechanism of the terror is introduced, the prison conspiracy. One morning, you were woken by the sounds of shouting and a commotion. A group of guards, their faces grim, enter the hall and, reading from a list provided by a prisoner, a known informer, they begin to arrest a group of 30 men. They are accused of conspiring to overthrow the guards and escape. It is a ludicrous charge, but it is a convenient one. It allows the revolutionary tribunal to bypass the formality of individual trials. The entire group is declared part of a single conspiracy and is condemned en masse. You watch as men you have known for months, men with whom you have shared bread and stories, are shackled together and led away, their protestations of innocence lost in the chaos. The paranoia in the prison is now absolute. You no longer trust anyone. Every conversation is a potential trap. Every shared complaint is a potential death sentence. The community of suspects has shattered into 1,000 individual points of terror. You, Julian, have now been a prisoner for almost a year. The man who entered this place, the precise, ordered, and quietly hopeful watchmaker, is a distant memory. You are now a creature of pure, animal survival. The fear, which was once a sharp, piercing thing, has become a dull, chronic ache in your soul. You have become numb. You watch the daily departure of the condemned with a kind of hollow, detached curiosity. You have seen so much death that it has begun to lose its meaning, and then, one sweltering afternoon in the month of Thermidor, it happens, the jailer enters with his list. The usual, profound, and terrible silence falls. He begins to read. You listen to the familiar cadence of his voice, the roll call of the dead. He reads a dozen names, then 2 dozen. He pauses, and then he calls the next name, Citizen Julian. The world stops. The sound of your own name, spoken in this context, is a physical blow, a punch to the gut that drives all the air from your lungs. For a moment, You are sure you have misheard. But then you see the faces of the prisoners around you turning to look at you, their eyes filled with a mixture of pity and a terrible, unmistakable relief. It was not their name, it was yours. Slowly, as if in a dream, you get to your feet. A guard steps forward and places a heavy hand on your shoulder, separating you from the crowd, from the world of the waiting, and placing you in the small, lonely group of the condemned. Your long, monotonous, and terrifying vigil is over. The lottery is finished, and your number has been drawn. As you are led out of the great, stinking salon for the last time, you take one final look at the republic of suspects you are leaving behind. And for the first time in many months, you feel a strange sense of calm. The waiting, which was the true torture, is finally at an end. The moment your name is called, a strange and profound calm descends upon you. For nearly a year, you have lived in a state of constant, gnawing anxiety, a prisoner of the daily lottery. Now that your number has been drawn, the anxiety dissolves, replaced by a cold, clear, and terrifying certainty. The waiting is over. You are led out of the great, noisy salon of the Luxembourg Palace, along with the 24 other men and women whose names were on the list. You are shackled at the wrists and herded into a series of crude, covered carts in the prison courtyard. The journey through the streets of Paris is a short one. You are not being taken far. Your destination is the grim, ancient heart of the city's judicial system, a place on the Isle de la Cité that has been a palace for kings and a prison for centuries. It is known to all of Paris as the antechamber of the guillotine, the conciergerie. If the Luxembourg Palace was a chaotic, surreal, and almost social prison, the conciergerie is a place of pure, functional, and industrial-scale death. The air here is colder, damper, the stone walls weeping with 1,000 years of misery. There is no pretense of a society here. This is a processing center, the final stop. You are pushed into the greffe, the clerk's office, a room buzzing with a grim, bureaucratic efficiency. Your name is found in one great ledger and is crossed off. It is then entered into a new one, the ledger of the condemned. You are no longer just a suspect. You are now one of the accusers, a person formally designated for trial. You are then led into a series of large, communal cells known as the chambers of the dead. Here, you are crammed in with the rest of your fournee, your batch. The atmosphere is completely different from the Luxembourg. The frantic, nervous energy is gone. It has been replaced by a heavy, somber, and almost silent resignation. You see an old aristocrat, a man who had been a leader of the prison salons, now sitting on the floor, his head in his hands. You see a young woman, a poet, writing frantically in a small notebook, a final letter to a loved one. Everyone here knows that the trial they are about to face is not a trial at all. It is a formality, a brief, legalistic prelude to the final journey in the tumbrel. You do not have to wait long. After only a few hours in the damp, cold cell, a guard appears at the barred door, holding a short list. He calls your name, Citizen Julian. The tribunal awaits. 2 guards escort you from the cell. They do not lead you outside. They take you through a labyrinth of dark, stone corridors, up a winding staircase, and through a series of guarded doors. The entire machine of revolutionary justice is housed within this single, sprawling complex, the Palais de Justice. You can hear a low, rumbling sound, a sound like a distant, angry ocean. As you get closer, you realize it is the sound of a great, packed crowd. The final door is opened, and you are pushed from the dim, quiet corridor into the bright, noisy, and terrifying spectacle of the courtroom of the Revolutionary Tribunal. The room is vast, and it is packed with people. The public galleries are overflowing with a jeering, bloodthirsty crowd of Parisian citizens, the sans-culottes, who attend these trials as a form of daily entertainment. You see the infamous tricoteuses, the knitting women, sitting in the front rows, their needles clicking away as they watch the parade of the condemned. The room is dominated by a high, raised platform where the judges sit. They are dressed in black robes, with tricolour sashes of red, white, and blue draped over their shoulders, and the red Phrygian cap of liberty on their heads. They look down at you with an air of bored, impatient authority. To their side sits the jury, 12 good and loyal Jacobin. Their face is a uniform mask of grim, patriotic certainty, and there, at his own table, sits the master of this theatre of death, the public prosecutor, Antoine Quentin Fouquier-Tinville. He is a pale, thin man, his face emotionless, his eyes like chips of cold, grey stone. He is not a fiery orator. He is a bureaucrat, a functionary, a man whose great talent is the efficient, relentless, and legalistic processing of human lives into corpses. You are made to stand in the dock, a small, raised pen for the accused. The clerk of the court reads your name and your indictment. The words are a meaningless blur of revolutionary jargon. You were accused of being an enemy of the people, of having conspired against the unity and indivisibility of the Republic, of having sought the restoration of the monarchy and the destruction of liberty. The charges are based on a single piece of evidence, the signed denunciation of your neighbour, Citizen Lamarck. Fouquier-Tinville rises. He does not even look at you. He speaks to the jury, his voice a flat, monotonous drone. He briefly summarizes the accusation. The accused, he says, was heard to praise the time of the tyrants and to decry the institutions of the Republic. The witness, a good and loyal citizen, has attested to his counter-revolutionary sentiments. The case is a simple one. You are given a chance to speak. You are assigned a lawyer, but he is a man appointed by the court, and you know his defense will be a mere formality, designed to give the illusion of a fair trial. You stand, your voice trembling, and you try to explain. You speak of the leaking pipe. You speak of your moment of simple, non-political frustration. You speak of your loyalty to the Republic, of the tricolour cockade you have always worn. As you speak, the crowd in the gallery hisses and jeers at you. The president of the tribunal, a man named Herman, cuts you off impatiently. The tribunal is not interested in your stories of plumbing. Citizen, he says, his voice dripping with contempt, it is interested in the purity of your revolutionary heart. And your heart, it seems, is full of the filth of the old regime. Your neighbour, Lamarck, is called as the only witness. He repeats his story, perhaps embellishing it now with new details, of how you hoarded food, of how you never sang the revolutionary anthem, the Marseillaise, with enough patriotic fervour. You are not allowed to question him directly. Your lawyer asks a few perfunctory questions, and then it is over. The entire trial has lasted less than 15 minutes. The farce of justice has run its course. You now stand, silent and trembling, as the president of the tribunal turns to the jury and asks them for their verdict. The president of the tribunal, Herman, turns his cold, impassive gaze towards the jury box. Citizen jurors, he says, his voice flat. You have heard the evidence against the accused. You have heard his feeble and self-serving denials. You will now deliberate and deliver the verdict of the people. But there is no deliberation. There is not even the pretense of one. The 12 jurors do not rise from their seats. They do not retire to a private chamber. The foreman of the jury, a grim-faced cabinet maker from the Faubourg Saint-Antoine, simply leans over and has a brief, whispered conversation with the man next to him. He nods, as if confirming a prearranged agreement. Then, he stands to face the court. The entire process has taken less than a minute. A deep, expectant silence falls over the courtroom. The jeering of the crowd has ceased, replaced by a quiet, bloodthirsty anticipation. You stand in the dock, your hands gripping the wooden rail in front of you, your knuckles white. You feel a strange, detached calm, the calm of a man who is watching his own fate unfold from a great distance. On the question of whether the accused, Citizen Julian, is an enemy of the people and has conspired against the liberty of the Republic, the foreman of the jury says, his voice a harsh, an educated monotone, "Our verdict is unanimous. We find him guilty." The word hangs in the air. Guilty. It is the word you have been expecting since the moment of your arrest, but hearing it spoken aloud in this formal, public setting gives it a terrible, final weight. The last, irrational, and deeply human flicker of hope that has been hiding in the deepest corner of your soul is finally, brutally, extinguished. The crowd in the gallery is out a low, satisfied cheer. The president of the tribunal nods, as if accepting a piece of routine paperwork. He now turns his attention to you, and for the first time, he seems to look directly at you, though his eyes are as cold and as empty as a winter sky. "Citizen Julian," he says, his voice devoid of any emotion. "The people, through the voice of this jury, have found you to be a traitor. You have hidden the heart of a royalist behind the mask of a simple craftsman. You are a cancer on the body of the Republic, and it is the duty of this tribunal to cut you out." He picks up a small gavel. "Therefore, the Revolutionary Tribunal, in the name of the French people and in accordance with the law, sentences you to the penalty of death. You will be taken to the Place de la Révolution and there be executed by the guillotine. The sentence is to be carried out within 24 hours. Long live the Republic." He brings the gavel down with a sharp, final crack. Your trial is over. Your life, for all intents and purposes, is over. You are roughly grabbed by the guards and led from the courtroom. You are not taken back to the main cells of the conciergerie. You are taken to the greffe, the clerk's office, once more. The same bored clerk finds your name in his ledger. He dips his pen in the ink, and next to your name, he makes a bold, red mark. It is a G, for guillotine. You have been processed, sentenced, and marked for death. From there, you are led to a different part of the prison. This is the area reserved for the condemned. You are pushed into a small, dark, and impossibly crowded stone cell with the other 20 or so men and women who have formed your fournee, your batch for the day's executions. The atmosphere here is utterly different from any you have experienced before. The frantic, nervous energy of the main prisons is gone. The defiant, gallows humor of Dong Tong is gone. All that is left is a profound, heavy, and deeply human silence. This is the final waiting room. Some of the prisoners are on their knees, praying, their lips moving in a silent, desperate conversation with a God they are about to meet. Others, like you, are simply sitting on the floor, their backs against the cold, damp stone walls, their faces a blank mask of shock and resignation. A young woman, an aristocrat, is weeping, not loudly, but with a quiet, hopeless, and continuous grief that is the most terrible sound you have ever heard. A guard brings you what is known as the condemned meal. It is a better meal than you have had in a year, with a piece of chicken and a small bottle of red wine for each of you. It is a final, bizarre act of state-sanctioned hospitality before the state kills you. Some of the prisoners eat and drink with a desperate, hungry gusto. You cannot bring yourself to touch it. You were given a piece of paper and a blunted quill pen to write a final letter. You think of your wife. You try to form the words, to tell her of your love, of your innocence. But your mind is a fork. What can you say? The platitudes of love and memory seem hollow and meaningless in the face of this final, brutal reality. You simply write her name, over and over again, until a tear blots the ink. The night passes in this slow, quiet torment. Sleep is an impossibility. You sit and you wait, and you listen. You listen to the sounds of the prison, and to the sounds of the city outside. And as the first, grey light of dawn begins to filter through the high, barred window of your cell, you hear a new sound. It is a low, heavy, rumbling sound, the sound of heavy, wooden wheels on cobblestones. The tumbrils, the executioner's carts, are arriving in the prison courtyard. The people's justice is ready to be served. The final crack of the president's gavel echoes in the silent courtroom. Your trial, a 15-minute journey from accused to condemned, is over. The life of Julian, the watchmaker, has been formally extinguished by the bureaucratic machine of the Republic. What is left is simply a body, waiting for its final processing. The guards seize your arms, their grip rough and impersonal, and pull you from the dock. You are not led back the way you came. You are taken through a different door, one that leads deeper into the labyrinthine bowels of the conciergerie. You are now officially on the path from which there is no return. You are brought once more to the graph, the clerk's office. The same Weasley clerk is there, his pen scratching endlessly in his great ledger. He finds your name, which was entered only that morning. He does not look up at you. He simply takes a pot of red ink, dips his quill, and makes a bold, thick cross beside your name. In some prisons, they would mark it with a G for guillotine. Here, the red cross is enough. It is the mark of a man whose accounts with the Republic are about to be settled in full. Your final possessions are taken. The small, carved button from your coat that they had allowed you to keep, a simple comfort you had held in your hand for months, is now stripped from you. You are a thing, an object to be disposed of, and you can take nothing with you. From the clerk's office, you were led down a final, dark, and dripping stone corridor. A jailer with a great ring of iron keys unbolts a heavy, iron-studded door. The salon of the dead, he says with a grim, practiced humor. He shoves you inside. This is the final waiting room. It is a large, vaulted stone cell, even more grim and ancient than the one you were in before. It is crowded with the other men and women of your forney, your batch. The air is thick with the smell of damp stone, of fear, and of a strange, heavy resignation. The surreal social order of the Luxembourg prison does not exist here. There are no card games, no philosophical discussions. The proximity of death has stripped away all but the most essential of human behaviors. In one corner, a small group of nobles, including the old aristocrat from your previous prison, stand together, speaking in low, quiet voices, a final, defiant performance of their class solidarity. In another, a priest is giving a quiet, final absolution to those who will accept it. Most, like you, are simply sitting on the floor, their backs against the cold, damp walls, lost in the silent, private world of their own last thoughts. As the afternoon fades, the jailers bring what is known as the condemned meal. It is a bizarre and final act of state procedure. You are each given a portion of roasted chicken, a piece of white bread, and a small bottle of red wine. After a year of watery soup and black, gritty bread, this meal is a feast. Some of the prisoners fall upon it with a desperate, animal hunger, a final affirmation of life before it is taken away. You, however, cannot eat. Your throat is a tight, dry knot. The very thought of food is a nauseating absurdity. You are also offered a chance to write a final letter. You are given a single sheet of rough paper and a blunted quill. You sit, the paper on your knees, and you try to write to your wife. You want to tell her of your love, of your innocence, of your hope that she will be safe. But the words are a meaningless jumble in your mind. How can you capture a lifetime of love and a universe of injustice in a few hurried and ink-blotted lines? You manage to write her name and the words, "I am innocent. I love you," and then your hand begins to shake so badly that you can no longer from the letters. The long night begins. There is no pretense of sleep here. The cell is lit by a single, smoking lantern. Its light casting long, dancing shadows on the vaulted ceiling. You sit, and you listen. You listen to the quiet, desperate weeping of a young man who cannot be more than 20. You listen to the low, steady murmur of the priest's prayers. You listen to the heavy, rhythmic breathing of the men and women around you, each person locked in their own final, internal struggle. And through the high, barred window, you can hear the sounds of the city that is about to kill you. You hear the cry of a night watchman, the distant, drunken singing from a tavern, the rattle of a carriage on the cobblestones. The life of the world goes on, indifferent to you and your small, extinguished fate, as the first, faint, grey light of dawn begins to touch the window. A new sound joins the city's chorus. It is a low, heavy, rumbling sound from the prison courtyard. The tumbrels, the executioner's carts have arrived. A new, collective tension fills the cell. The waiting is over. The final journey is about to begin. The long, agonizing night in the condemned cell finally gives way to a cold, grey, and indifferent dawn. You have not slept. You have simply sat, a silent statue of resignation, listening to the sounds of the prison and the city waking up. The sound of the tumbrels arriving in the courtyard was the final, brutal confirmation. There will be no last-minute reprieve, no miracle of justice. This is the last day of your life. A short time after sunrise, the heavy, barred door of your cell is unbolted. A jailer, accompanied by several armed guards, enters. He holds a list, the final list, and he reads your name, and the names of your fellow condemned, one last time. There is no protest, there are no screams. There is only a deep, weary silence as you and the others rise to your feet. You are led from the cell, not to the courtroom, but to a small, grim room near the main gate of the conciergerie. This is where the final preparations are made, a process known grimly as the toilette. Here, waiting for you, is the executioner and his assistants. They are not monsters. They are simple, methodical workmen, their faces bored and impassive. They have a job to do, and they perform it with a practiced and emotional efficiency. One by one, the condemned are forced onto a small wooden stool. An assistant, wielding a large pair of shears, roughly cuts the hair from the back of your neck, clearing the path for the blade. If you are wearing a shirt with a collar, it is torn open at the neck. The feeling of the cold, iron shears against your skin, the soft fall of your own hair onto the dirty floor, is a moment of profound and chilling intimacy. It is the first physical touch of the great machine that is about to consume you. When the haircut is complete, your hands are tied tightly behind your back with a rough, thick rope. The knots are brutally tight, cutting off the circulation to your fingers. You are now utterly helpless, a parcel being prepared for delivery. When the entire batch, your foreknee, has been prepared, You are led out into the main courtyard of the prison. The sight is one of organized chaos. The red-painted tumbrils, simple, high-sided farm carts, are waiting, the horses stamping their hooves impatiently on the cobblestones. The courtyard is filled with guards, officials, and a small, ghoulish crowd of onlookers who have come to see the procession off. You and the other prisoners are herded, with shoves and curses, towards the carts. You are forced to climb aboard, your bound hands making the process awkward and humiliating. You are packed in tightly, so tightly that you can barely move, a standing room only crowd of the dead. Some prisoners, mostly the aristocrats, hold their heads high, their faces a mask of proud defiance. Others, like you, are simply numb, their eyes staring blankly at the grey sky. A few are weeping openly, their bodies shaking with a grief and terror so profound it is hard to look at them. With a crack of the driver's whip, the heavy cart lurches forward, its great, wooden wheels beginning their slow, rattling, an agonizingly long journey through the streets of Paris. The journey to the Place de la Révolution is an ordeal in itself. It is a slow, public parade of shame and degradation. The route is a well-known one, and the streets are lined with a great, roaring crowd. This is the great, daily theatre of the revolution, and you are the star performer. The noise is a physical assault. You are met with a wall of sound, jeers, insults, and curses from the most fervent of the sans-culottes. They scream at you, calling you a traitor, a royalist, a monster. They shake their fists at you. Women hold up their children to get a better look at the enemies of the people on their way to their doom. Through the gaps in the crowd, you catch glimpses of your city, the city you have loved your entire life. You see the familiar curve of a street, the facade of a building you once admired, the sign of a shop where you used to buy your tools. But it is all distant and unreal now, as if you are looking at a painting of a life that belonged to someone else. You are no longer a part of this world. You are simply a ghost, passing through it one last time. The journey takes over an hour. The cart rattles and jolts on the rough cobblestones, every movement a small, painful reminder of your bound and helpless state. You stand, swaying with the motion of the cart, and you do your best to retreat into your own mind, to find a place of quiet stillness in the midst of this roaring, hateful chaos. Finally, the cart makes a last, wide turn. The narrow, crowded streets open up into a vast, windswept public square. The Place de la Révolution, and there, in the center of the square, you see it for the first time. It is taller than you imagined, a slender, skeletal frame of wood, painted a dull, blood red, and at the top, glinting with a cold, wet light against the grey Parisian sky, is the slanted blade, the guillotine. The cart rumbles to a halt at the base of the scaffold. Your journey is over. This is the final destination. The sound of the crowd here is a low, expectant, almost hungry roar. You have arrived. You stand in the rattling cart, at the foot of the scaffold. The structure is a masterpiece of grim, functional engineering. You, the watchmaker, can appreciate its terrible efficiency. It is not an instrument of rage. It is a machine, designed to perform a single, simple task with a speed and a finality that is absolute. The two tall, red-painted posts, the grooved runners, the heavy, angled blade, the lunette at the bottom that will hold the neck, the great wicker basket filled with sawdust to catch the heads. It is all terribly, brutally, and impersonally logical. The executioner, Charles Henry Sanson, and his assistants work with a practiced, almost bored, efficiency. They are not monsters. They are public servants, functionaries of death, and they move with the unhurried calm of men performing a familiar and repetitive trade. A name is called from the list. It is the old aristocrat who had been in the Luxembourg Palace with you. He is pulled, not gently, from the cart. He walks, with a stiff and proud dignity, up the few wooden steps of the scaffold. The process is horrifyingly fast. He's seized by the assistants, pushed face down onto a pivoting plank called the bascule. The plank is slid forward, and the man's neck is positioned in the lower half of the lunette. The upper half slams down with a heavy, wooden THED, locking his head in place. The executioner pulls a rope. You hear a sharp, metallic swish as the great, heavy blade is released, a sound that cuts through the roar of the crowd. It is followed a split second later by a deep, wet, and final chop. The crowd lets out a great, collective roar, a sound of grim and terrible satisfaction. An assistant holds up the head by the hair for the crowd to see. The entire event, from the man leaving the cart to the holding up of his head, has taken less than 2 minutes. Another name is called. A woman, the young poet, is next. The process is repeated. Thud, swish, chop, the roar of the crowd. One by one, the people from your foreknee, the people you have lived with, spoken with, and shared a final, terrible night with, are dispatched by this brutally efficient machine. You watch, your mind a numb, empty void. The terror has become so immense, so immediate, that it has turned into a strange, detached calm. You are simply watching a process, a red and rhythmic disassembly of human beings. Your own name is getting closer on the list. You are next. You take a slow, deep breath, trying to remember the words of a prayer. It is then that a new sound begins to intrude. It is not the familiar, bloodthirsty roar of the crowd in the square. It is a different sound, a sound of genuine chaos and panic, coming from the streets that lead into the Place de la Révolution. There are shouts, screams, the sound of running feet, and the sharp, unmistakable crack of a pistol shot. The crowd in the square becomes agitated, their attention turning away from the scaffold. People are looking back, their faces a mixture of confusion and fear. The executioner, his hand on the rope for the next release, pauses. He looks with irritation towards the source of the commotion. A man on horseback, his clothes in disarray, his face wild with excitement, forces his way through the dense crowd. He is waving a piece of paper. He's a messenger from the National Convention. He shouts, his voice hoarse, "Stop the executions! Stop in the name of the convention!" He's followed by a flood of National Guardsmen, their loyalties now visibly shifted. They begin to push back the crowd, their expressions a mixture of triumph and fear. The air is filled with a new and different set of chants, not death to the traitors, but down with the tyrant, death to Robespierre. A profound, bewildered chaos descends upon the square. No one seems to know what is happening. The executioner and his assistants stand on the scaffold, looking confused and uncertain. The officials in charge of the executions are in a frantic, panicked conversation with the messenger. The crowd, which only moments before had been a single, unified entity of hate, is now a confused, scattering mob, unsure of which side to be on in this sudden, violent, and unexpected shift of the political winds. You stand in the tumbril, your hands still tied behind your back, the blood of the person who went before you still wet on the floorboards of the cart. The blade of the guillotine, which was meant for your neck, hangs silent and waiting, a few yards away. You do not understand the political intricacies of what is happening. You only know one thing. The methodical, unstoppable rhythm of the killing machine has, for the first time in a year, been broken. The executioner has dropped his rope. The guards are no longer looking at you. The eyes of Paris are no longer on the guillotine. You have no idea if this is a permanent reprieve or a mere temporary pause. But as you stand there, in the midst of the chaos, under the shadow of the blade, you feel the first, fragile, and utterly unbelievable flicker of a hope you thought had been extinguished forever. You are still alive. The chaos in the Place de la Révolution is absolute. The machinery of the terror, which has run with such relentless, bloody precision for so long, has shuddered to a halt. The executioner and his assistants, their authority suddenly vanished, stand uncertainly on the scaffold. The guards who moments ago were holding back the crowd with grim determination now look confused, their loyalties in question. You and the few other prisoners remaining in the tumbrils are, for the moment, completely forgotten. You are the eye of a political hurricane, a strange, still point in the world of sudden, violent motion. The initial, unbelievable flicker of hope begins to solidify into a dawning, terrifying possibility. You might actually live. After an hour of this confusion, a new order is given. The executions for the day are cancelled. You and the other survivors of your forney are not set free. The bureaucracy, even in a state of collapse, does not move that quickly. Instead, you are herded back into the tumbril, and with a strange, surreal sense of reversal, you begin the slow, rattling journey back through the now chaotic, riotous streets, and back to the grim, familiar walls of the conciergerie prison. You are pushed back into a cell, but the prison you return to is not the one you left. The atmosphere of hopeless, silent resignation has been shattered, replaced by a wild, hysterical, and disbelieving energy. The prisoners are crowded at the barred windows, shouting to the guards, trying to understand the news from the street. Rumors fly like sparks in a high wind. Robespierre has been arrested. The tyrant is dead. The terror is over. The next few days are a blur of confusion and hope. The great, daily lottery of the list does not happen. The sound of the tumbrils in the morning is gone. And then, a new sound begins to be heard, the sound of the prison gates being unbolted, not to admit new suspects, but to let old ones go. The process is slow, cautious, and bureaucratic, but it happens. Day by day, men and women you have lived with 4 months are called to the greffe, not for a trial, but for a release. Finally, after a week of this agonizing, hopeful waiting, your own name is called. You are brought before the same weary-faced clerk who marked you for death. He finds your name in his great ledger. He takes his quill, dips it in the ink, and with the same indifferent flourish he used before, he strikes a line through your name and writes a single word in the margin: released. You are handed a small bundle containing the few possessions that were taken from you, though your fine silver watch, you are told, has been lost by the administration. You are led through the final corridors, and then a guard unbolts the great, heavy gate of the conciergerie. He pushes it open, and a rectangle of bright, brilliant, and almost painful sunlight illuminates the dark, foul-smelling corridor. "Go on, citizen," the guard says, his voice not unkind. You are free. You step out into the sunlight. The feeling of the warm sun on your face, the sensation of a fresh, open breeze on your skin is so overwhelming, so powerful, that your knees feel weak, and you have to steady yourself against the stone wall. The simple, ordinary sounds of the city, the cry of a vendor, the laughter of a child, the gentle splash of the Seine against the quay are a symphony, a chorus of life that is so beautiful it brings tears to your eyes. You begin the long walk home, a ghost returning to your own life. The city is a changed place. The intense, paranoid fervor is gone, replaced by a weary, cautious, and almost celebratory mood. The red caps of liberty are fewer, the revolutionary songs less common. The city's trying, desperately, to forget. You finally arrive at your own street, your own building. You climb the stairs, your heart pounding with a hope that is so fierce it is almost a pain. You open the door to your apartment, and she is there, your wife. She looks at you, and for a moment, she does not recognize the gaunt, grey-haired, and haunted-looking stranger standing in her doorway. Then her eyes widen, and she speaks your name, a whisper of pure, disbelieving joy. You have survived. In the years that follow, you try to piece your life back together. You return to your watchmaker's bench, to the familiar, comforting world of tiny, intricate gears and springs. But you are not the same man. Your hands, which were once so steady, now have a persistent tremor. A loud, unexpected noise can make you jump with a fear control. And at night, you still dream of the sound of the jailer's boots in the corridor, of the heavy, final thud of the lunette. You learn, months later, that your neighbor, Citizen Lamarck, the man who denounced you, was himself arrested and executed just a few days after your own aborted execution. He was accused of being a fervent Robespierrist, an extremist. The same machine that he so eagerly fed had, in the end, turned and consumed him as well. The news brings you no satisfaction, no sense of victory. There were no winners in the terror. There were only victims, and those who were lucky enough to survive. You have survived. You have been given your life back. But you know that a part of you will forever remain a prisoner in that vast, stinking, and surreal republic of suspects. The ordeal is over, but the nightmare will never be entirely gone. Our journey with the prisoner of the terror is now at an end. We have heard the sudden, terrible knock at the door, felt the cold despair of the prison floor, and stood in the final, terrifying shadow of the guillotine. It was a world where reason was a crime, where suspicion was a death sentence, and where survival was not a reward for virtue, but a random, miraculous accident. That world of tricolour sashes, of jeering crowds, and the slow, rattling journey of the tumbril has now faded away, leaving only the quiet of the present moment. The survivor's long and terrifying ordeal is over. And now, so is yours. There is nothing left to do but to rest, to let go of the day, and to drift into the deep and peaceful sleep that you deserve. Rest now. Sleep well.